Hey there. Tonight, we're not boarding a cruise. We're stepping onto a ship that's bigger than belief, colder than it has any right to be, and heading straight into history's most infamous iceberg. You'll live the journey of a third class passenger on the RMS Titanic. From hopeful departure to haunting silence, you'll face cramped bunks, endless stairwells, locked gates, freezing water, and the kind of night that never truly leaves you, even if you live to tell the tale. If this kind of storytelling helps you rest, feel free to like the video and subscribe, but only if it genuinely brings you peace. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is right now. It's oddly comforting to see who else is drifting off to the same quiet story. Also, if you'd like to support my work, and you'd prefer to watch these videos without ads, check out the Patreon link in the description. It helps keep this little lifeboat of a channel afloat. So, dim the lights. Turn on a fan for that soft background hum. Settle in, and let's begin with the footsteps of a passenger walking up the gangway one last time. You don't really believe it until you see the smoke. 4 black funnels rising like factory chimneys into the April sky, trailing a steady plume over the harbour. The RMS Titanic, they say, is the largest ship in the world. Bigger than imagination. Taller than most buildings. You arrive by tender from Queenstown, a little seasick already and clinging to your bundle of clothes like it contains all your worth. Because it does. Everything you own fits in a canvas sack. A scarf from your sister, a wooden spoon, 2 apples already bruised, and the ticket, of course. A third-class berth, one way to New York. You check your pocket again just to make sure it hasn't fluttered away. The crowd is thick with people like you, hopeful, harried, and slightly confused by the scale of things. Steerage passengers aren't given grand welcomes. There are no brass bands or champagne flutes, just an officious fellow with a clipboard barking names. You shuffle forward in the queue, elbow to elbow with mothers carrying babies, Irish farm boys whispering to each other, and a few stiff-looking Scandinavians with suspiciously large suitcases. You suspect they're smuggling bread. Smart, really. The Titanic looms so high above the quay that you have to tip your head back until your cap nearly falls off. There's a gangway, but not for you. That's for second class, or maybe even first. The wealthy folks with hats that cost more than your father's farm. You're directed around to a smaller entryway near the cargo loading zone, and you file in like livestock. It's hard not to feel like part of the cargo. Inside, the smell hits you first. Fresh paint, new wood, a hint of coal smoke and salt air. It's not unpleasant, just sharp, like the ship is still curing. A steward, young and already tired, waves you along a metal corridor without making eye contact. You descend a set of narrow stairs into the bowels of the vessel. It gets warmer as you go down, and louder. Somewhere, deep in the belly of the ship, you can feel the thrum of engines being prepared for departure. Your berth is humble. A 4-berth cabin with whitewashed metal walls, a single porthole the size of a dinner plate, and 2 sets of bunks, each barely wide enough to turn over in. The mattress is horsehair. The pillow has seen better days. You share it with 3 others, a Welsh miner, a girl from Donegal who refuses to speak, and an elderly Italian man who immediately removes his boots and sighs like he's home. You'll be sleeping beside his socks for the next 5 days, give or take. Still, it's cleaner than you expected. A miracle, really. You were warned about steerage, lice, foul food, damp sheets. But the White Star Line has made a point of advertising this voyage as unusually civilized for third class. The room even has an electric light, which you turn on and off several times just because you can. When the ship finally pulls away from the dock, you feel it not as motion but vibration. A long, slow tremor through the bones of the ship. People rush to the narrow passageways, craning for a look at the receding harbour. Some wave, some cry. A baby howls, unimpressed by history. Above deck, far, far above you, the first-class passengers are sipping tea and watching the departure like it's an orchestral performance. Some wear furs despite the spring air. You wonder if they even know there's a third class aboard. You wouldn't be surprised if they assumed you were ballast. A steward drops by to explain the rules. Curfew at 10. Men and women sleep separately unless they're married, and you'll be needing a marriage certificate to prove it. Meals are taken in the dining saloon, 2 decks up, through the steel corridor and past the washing station. Clean hands are apparently expected. You wonder if clean boots are too. Yours have never been accused of such a thing. Dinner is more than tolerable. You sit at a long wooden table with chipped edges, surrounded by strangers with varying accents and suspicious elbows. The fare: soup, boiled beef, potatoes, bread with proper butter, and plum pudding. It's hearty and hot, and there's plenty of it. The White Star Line is very proud of feeding its passengers properly, even those in steerage. You hear someone mutter that the menu upstairs includes roast squab and oysters. You quietly chew your bread a little faster, lest you start resenting your pudding. Afterward, you walk the lower corridors. The ship is a labyrinth. Metal walls, doors marked in confusing codes, stairways that lead to nowhere. You pass a small band practicing in a side room. Not the grand ensemble from first class, but a modest fiddle and piano duo. They play a reel that reminds you of home, and you stop just long enough to pretend you're not listening. There's a room for washing, large, tiled, cold, with basins and a pump handle. You splash water on your face and look in the mirror. You don't look like someone who belongs on the world's greatest ship. You look tired. But you're here. You made it. For now, that's enough. That night, as you lie on the too thin mattress with your arms tucked in tight to avoid brushing your neighbour, you stare up at the metal ceiling and try to imagine what first class looks like. There are electric elevators, you've heard, a squash court, a Turkish bath. You don't know what that is, but it sounds complicated. There's a reading room with velvet chairs, a veranda cafe with real ivy and a glass roof. Some passengers even brought their automobiles. Not that there are roads in the Atlantic. You consider sneaking up to see it just once. But the doors are guarded, and you have neither the clothes nor the confidence to bluff your way through a grand staircase. Instead, you focus on the gentle hum of the engines. It's like sleeping above a breathing beast. The Titanic is a marvel, 882 feet long, nearly 100 feet wide. She carries over 2,200 people, crew, passengers, staff, more than the population of your village, and she's fast, capable of over 21 knots. That's more speed than most trains, though no one below deck is really in a hurry. The ship's designers claimed she could remain afloat with 4 of her 16 watertight compartments flooded. Some even call her unsinkable. You're not sure who started that rumour, but it's repeated like gospel. You close your eyes and feel the sway of the ocean, gentle for now. The North Atlantic is calm tonight, a rare blessing. Someone down the hall is playing a harmonica, a lullaby maybe, or just a tune to pass the time. The Italian man snores. The Donegal girl shifts restlessly in her bunk. You try not to think of the distance beneath you, the fathoms of black water below the hull. You remind yourself this is an adventure, a new start. You are 24 years old and have 3 coins in your pocket. But you are also a passenger aboard the Titanic. That's something to tell your grandchildren, assuming you make it to New York, and then somehow find both a wife and the money for grandchildren. The next morning you're awakened by a bell. Not an alarm exactly, but something that clearly means you're expected to rise. You dress quickly, no hot water of course. You nod to the others in your cabin, a quiet nod, since conversation before bed is dangerous business. Breakfast is oatmeal, tea, and stewed prunes. You're not sure if it's meant to be comforting or a warning. Up on deck, you steal a glimpse of the sea. It stretches forever in all directions, silver blue and still. You're surrounded by sky and nothingness. It's beautiful in a way that makes you feel small. Just for a second, you understand why people paint oceans. You lean on the rail, squinting toward the horizon. Somewhere out there is America. Somewhere ahead, a new life. Somewhere above you, someone is reading a novel and sipping coffee from a porcelain cup. But down here for now, you are just a speck aboard a steel mountain, carried westward by the dreams of better things. And for the moment, everything is still afloat. The first full day at sea begins with your head jammed into a bunk corner and the Welshman above you snoring like he's strangling a goose. You're not sure which is louder, the man or the ship. The engines below beat like a great mechanical heart, deep and steady. It's a sound you'll grow used to, or at least tolerate, like the smell of damp wool or the taste of lukewarm tea. You climb down the narrow ladder, boots thudding on metal floor, trying not to wake the girl from Donegal, though truth be told, you're not sure she sleeps at all. She always looks slightly startled, as if she's just remembered something terribly important, and then forgotten it again. The Italian fellow is already up and lacing his boots, humming tunelessly. You nod to him. He nods back. Language barriers are easy to navigate when there's only one topic worth speaking about: breakfast. The corridor outside your cabin is narrow enough that 2 people passing have to negotiate it like a waltz. Pipes run along the ceiling. Everything is metal. The walls, the doors, even the staircase railings. You feel like a mouse in a boiler room. Still, it's clean. Surprisingly so, the White Star Line made sure of that. After all, third class is no longer called steerage in official brochures. That word, they realised, made people think of livestock. And livestock don't pay £6.10 for a transatlantic crossing. You pass a steward in a blue uniform, young, half-shaved, carrying a mop. He doesn't smile, but he doesn't bark either. That's something. Compared to most steamers, Titanic treats its third-class passengers with almost shocking decency. You've even got a proper dining saloon, not just a bench and a bowl, and you're allowed outside at certain hours. So long as you don't wander too far up the decks and startle the people in tuxedos. You follow the smell of bread to the third-class dining room, located midship on F deck. It's bigger than you expected. Long tables with benches, white enamel mugs, and tin cutlery that clinks like coins. The room is bright too, lit by electric bulbs that buzz slightly when you walk under them. You spot the Welshman already halfway through a bowl of porridge. You join him and are soon joined by the others. A family of Swedes with matching coats, an Englishwoman with 4 children and no husband, and a very round man who orders 2 servings without shame or explanation. The food is plain but plentiful. Breakfast is porridge, bread, marmalade, and tea, hot and dark. No fancy teas here, just the kind strong enough to make your ancestors sit up in their graves. Someone mentions that first-class passengers have kippers and smoked salmon. Someone else mentions that they are welcome to it, since it smells like feet. After breakfast, you explore the steerage section. It's not large, but it is its own little world. There's a general room where people gather, play cards, mend clothes, argue, flirt. A piano stands in one corner, and someone is always trying to play it with varying degrees of success. The Irish boys know a few jigs, the Norwegians do not. A small library sits against one wall, mostly Bibles and books no one intends to read. But it looks respectable, and that's the point. The White Star Line wanted third class to feel clean, moral, and well supervised. Not because they cared, particularly, but because the immigration authorities in New York did. Ships that arrived with lice, fever, or rowdiness risked losing their landing permits. So the company, wise to the economics, kept steerage tidy. They hired matrons to monitor women and children. They fed you 3 times a day. They even installed electric fans to keep the air from turning fetid. Of course, you're not supposed to know that. You're supposed to be grateful for the generosity. And you are. It's better than any crossing your cousin ever described. His ship had rats the size of chickens and smelled of cabbage from Dublin to Halifax. Titanic, by comparison, smells faintly of varnish. You make your way up to the open-air deck, one of the few parts of the ship where third-class passengers are allowed fresh air. It's not large, but it's something. Children chase each other between wooden benches. A man tunes a violin. Somewhere above, you hear faint strains of a string quartet, probably playing something French and complicated. You sit on a bench and watch the sea. The water stretches to forever, calm and cold and vast. You're halfway to nowhere. You're allowed on deck only during certain hours. First class has their own promenades, sheltered and adorned with ivy. Second class has deck chairs and newspapers. You have a wooden bench and the sky. Honestly, you'll take it. The sky doesn't care how much you paid for your ticket. Back below, a steward announces lunch. The dining saloon fills quickly. You sit with the same group as before. The miner, the Donegal girl, the Swedish family. Everyone's a little warmer now. A little looser with their stories. You learn the Welshman's name is Evan. He's going to Pittsburgh to work in the mills. The Swedish father speaks some English. He says simply, America better. No one argues. Lunch is soup, corned beef, and boiled potatoes. There's rice pudding for dessert. You scrape your plate clean. It's not gourmet, but it's hot. And it's yours. You imagine your mother's face if she saw you being served at a real table, with a cloth napkin and everything. Granted, the napkin is more whole than cloth, but still. That afternoon, you wander. The ship is a maze, and it's easy to get lost. You pass doors labelled No Admittance. You see stairwells marked Crew Only. You consider ignoring them, but remember the steward's warning. Steerage passengers caught trespassing will be confined to quarters. The Donegal girl tried it once, she says. Got as far as the second-class hallway before being escorted back like a schoolchild caught with someone else's lunch. In truth, there's a whole other world above you. First-class passengers stroll through lounges with chandeliers, read in leather chairs, and bathe in Turkish steam rooms. The grand staircase is carved oak, with wrought iron railings and a glass dome overhead. You saw it in a postcard once. It looked like a palace. Meanwhile, you have creaky bunks and a washroom with 12 sinks for hundreds of people. Still, you suppose it builds character. And blisters. By evening, the ship grows quiet. Steerage passengers trickle back to their cabins. There's no scheduled entertainment. Not for you, anyway. Some folks bring out fiddles. Someone starts singing. A hymn, you think. Others hum along. You sit near the doorway, sipping lukewarm tea and watching the flame flicker behind the electric light bulb. There's something about ships that makes everyone feel philosophical. Perhaps it's the water. Perhaps it's the silence. Or perhaps it's the realization that you are floating in a giant iron box, miles from anything solid, relying on the stubbornness of steel and the calculations of men you've never met. You lie down for the night and listen. The Welshman is snoring again. The Italian man coughs softly in his sleep. The girl from Donegal whispers a prayer. You think about your brother, left behind, and your uncle waiting in New Jersey with a job at the docks. Maybe. If the letter was true. If the job still exists. For now, you are here. Aboard Titanic. Below decks, yes, but afloat. Safe. Federal. And carried westward at 21 knots on what they call the Ship of Dreams. Dreams, you suppose, look different depending on where your bunk is. Still, the sea is quiet, the hull is strong, and the night, for now, is kind. You wake slowly, disoriented by the quiet. It's not true silence. Nothing aboard the Titanic is ever silent, but something's different. The usual early clatter of boots in the hallway hasn't started. No coughs echoing off steel. No one shouting for a missing sock. Just the deep, steady hum of the engines far below, vibrating faintly through the bunk frame and into your bones like the purr of a massive cat you dare not startle. The light through the tiny porthole is grey-blue, filtered through Atlantic mist. It's early, but you're wide awake. You've decided that today you're going to climb. You swing your legs down carefully. The Welshman above you is still asleep, mouth open, emitting low noises like someone trying to remember the words to a hymn in their sleep. The Donegal girl has left already. Her bunk is empty, her blanket neatly folded, her presence already a ghost. The Italian man snores softly, boots by his bedside in perfect placement. You dress quickly, quietly, and slip out into the corridor before the daily shuffle begins. The air down here in third class, officially called steerage by everyone except White Star's pamphlets, is thick with engine heat and the scent of wet wool. The corridor is narrow enough that passing someone requires sideways negotiation and a muttered apology. Pipes line the ceiling, rivets pattern the walls. There's a sense that everything here is very sturdy and very uninterested in your comfort. But today, you're heading up, beyond the reach of the heat, beyond the bulkheads that mark your invisible boundaries, beyond where your ticket says you belong. You've heard whispers of the higher decks, not just the first-class rooms, the ones with fireplaces, private promenades, real bathtubs, but of the corridors that feel like museums, of the grand staircase, carved from wood finer than any church you've seen. You want to see it, if only for a moment, if only from a corner. You start the climb. The first few staircases are familiar. Utilitarian steel steps, cold railings, walls painted a colour that can only be described as institutional beige. You pass a steward who nods sleepily and doesn't ask where you're going. Lucky, that. The change happens gradually. You pass through a metal door, and suddenly the walls are panelled. The floor has carpet. The light grows warmer, as if the bulbs here burn a better brand of electricity. The air smells of varnish and faint perfume. You've left the Titanic as transport and entered Titanic as temple. You slow your pace, walk softly. No one looks up, but you know, instinctively, that you don't belong here, that your boots are too loud, that your coat smells too much like salt and boiled beef. And then you see it, the grand staircase. It rises before you like a cathedral in motion. Ornate oak railings curl gracefully around a sweeping set of steps. Ironwork glitters in soft light. At the landing stands a clock flanked by two carved female figures. Honour and glory crowning time. You wonder if either of them knows what time it actually is, or if they're just guessing politely. Above the staircase, a domed glass skylight lets in filtered light. You imagine it would be beautiful on a sunny day, but today it's just a moody grey, like the ocean in glass form. You don't dare touch anything. You just stand there, heart thudding like a drum solo in a hymn, watching a steward in white gloves arrange something on a side table. A vase of fresh flowers. Orchids, maybe. Someone upstairs has orchids. The steward spots you. His expression doesn't change, not quite. Just enough to communicate that this is not your hallway. You offer a vague nod and retreat the way you came, trying not to look like someone who had to see it to believe it. You drift sideways into second class. Fewer chandeliers here, but still very proper. You pass through the second class library, neat rows of books, mostly Bibles, school texts, and novels about quiet people doing quiet things. A man in a bowler hat reads aloud to his wife in a whisper. You walk slower in here. You feel like if you rustle your sleeves too loudly, someone might ask to see your grammar school certificate. There's a second-class smoking room too, smaller than first classes but still elegant. A pair of older men sit by the windows playing cards, smoke drifting like clouds of contemplation above their heads. One is speaking French, the other possibly German. You pretend not to notice. They pretend not to notice you. Eventually you turn back. You've gone high enough. You've seen their world, at least the edge of it, and you've confirmed what you suspected. It was never built with you in mind. Back down in third class, everything returns to form. The benches are harder, the walls closer, the air thicker with people and potatoes. But you're greeted with a grin by a boy you barely know, and a nod by a man who snores in harmony. You sit in the general room and exhale like someone who's made it home after an awkward dinner. The general room is alive this morning. Someone's playing a fiddle again, the same tune as yesterday, but faster. A girl is clapping along, offbeat but enthusiastically. A young man tries to show off his tap steps, but slips and nearly takes out a bench. Everyone laughs, and the moment becomes a story before it finishes. The piano in the corner is being abused again. You can hear a hymn start, stop, restart, then veer entirely off course. No one minds. Someone brings out a deck of cards. Another offers tea. No one asks where you've been. Lunch is stew and bread. Always stew and bread. But today, someone's managed to swipe an extra scoop of treacle pudding, and the table erupts in fake outrage and real envy. You hear more rumours during the meal. One man says the ship is going too fast. Another says there was ice reported to the north. A third man, who has read one book and now considers himself a naval engineer, claims the ship can't sink because the hull is divided into 16 watertight compartments. Even if for flood, he says through a mouthful of beef, she'll stay afloat. Built like a fortress, she is. You look down at your plate and imagine water finding its way into every spoonful. After lunch, you go up again, but only as far as the open-air deck allowed to third class. It's small, stern-facing, with benches along the rail, but the sky is bright now, and the air is fresh. Children chase each other. A pair of young lovers try very hard not to look like they're holding hands. A steward watches with the patient expression of a man who's been told not to interfere unless someone falls overboard. You find a spot at the railing and watch the waves break gently behind the ship. It's hard to fathom how much power is driving the Titanic forward. Nearly 50,000 horsepower, 3 enormous propellers churning the Atlantic into foam. You think of the stokers down below, men sweating in engine rooms the size of cathedrals, shoveling coal into furnaces 24 hours a day. Most of the ship's crew never see sunlight, but they're the ones making the world move. You stay on deck longer than usual. No one shoos you off. Maybe the steward is tired. Maybe he's warming up to you. Maybe, unlikely, you just look respectable from behind. When the wind gets too sharp, you head back down to your bunk. The Welshman is awake and telling a long story that seems to involve goats, a ladder, and a very unfortunate hat. The Italian man nods solemnly, whether from comprehension or politeness is anyone's guess. The Donegal girl rolls her eyes and closes her book. You lie back on your bunk, staring at the ceiling. It's dotted with rivets and streaks of moisture from the warm air below. You think about honour and glory again, about the orchids, about the glass dome overhead. You wonder what it would be like to walk that staircase freely, as if it were your home, not a museum closed for cleaning. But you also remember the smile of the child who shared half a biscuit earlier, the man who offered you his stool, the music, the laughter, the sense that down here, no one is pretending to be anything other than alive. You drift to sleep that night with a strange feeling in your chest. Not quite envy, not quite contentment, something in between. Something shaped like a staircase that you'll never climb, and a bench that always has room for one more. The strange thing is how hard it is to sleep, even when you're tired. And you are tired, your boots are tired, your spine is tired, even your eyelids, which have spent all day squinting against salt-bright skies or smoky lamps, have become heavy with the weight of everything you've seen. And yet, sleep doesn't come easy. It's your 3rd full night aboard the Titanic. And though the ship moves smoothly, as smooth as a hotel, people keep saying, your thoughts do not. You lie in your bunk, staring at the ceiling, and wonder how much water sits above your head. You're 7 decks down, give or take. That's hundreds of tons of ocean, all held back by steel plates, rivets, and the confidence of shipbuilders who promised everything would be just fine. The lights in your berth dim automatically at curfew, electric bulbs on a timer controlled from somewhere else. A small modern miracle, though when they flicker, you can't help but wonder if it's the system or the sea. The cabin is quiet. Evan, the Welshman, has already fallen asleep and is breathing heavily, like he's training to be a tuba. The Italian man, whose name you think might be Carlo, snores so gently it's almost musical. The Donegal girl hasn't spoken in a day and a half, but she's here, arms folded, staring at the ceiling as if it might crack open and reveal answers. There's no breeze down here, no window to crack open, just the slow warmth of breathing bodies and the heat from the boilers below. Your mattress is a hair-stuffed pad on a wooden frame, and it creaks every time you roll over, as if it too has opinions about how you're sleeping. You'd think, being so far from land, from streets and factories and chickens and cartwheels, that the noise would be gone. But the Titanic hums like a living thing. Pipes shudder. Metal flexes. Somewhere in the walls, water moves with a low, sloshing rhythm that makes you deeply aware of how surrounded you are. At times it sounds like the ship is groaning in its sleep. You try to count those sounds, identify them, anchor yourself in their repetition. That one above the door, A soft hiss from the heating pipe. That one near your bunk. The creak of a support beam flexing with the sea. That one deeper still. A muffled clang. Possibly something from the engine room. Possibly not. Someone knocks into a bed frame nearby, and the whole cabin shakes slightly. You wonder if this is what it's like being a spoon inside a drawer. Then you wonder if spoons ever panic. The air feels colder tonight. Not frigid, but crisp. Like someone left a window open 3 decks up, and the wind remembered how to find you. That's unusual. Third class is typically stifling. The heat from the boilers keeps it warm even when the Atlantic is icy above. But tonight, your nose is cold. You pull the blanket up and curl inward. No one else seems to notice. Or if they do, they've decided not to mention it. That's how things work down here. If it's not fire or famine, it's probably not worth complaining about. Still, something feels off. Earlier that evening during dinner, you'd overheard 2 men whispering about ice. Saw it on the chart, one said. Bergs spotted further south than usual. The other scoffed. Ship this size could punch through a barn wall. You didn't say anything at the time, but now, in the quiet of your bunk, you start to wonder what that barn might be made of, and whether the wall might punch back. The Titanic is 882 feet long, nearly 100 feet wide. Her double-bottom hull is divided into 16 watertight compartments. The theory, often repeated, rarely questioned, is that she can stay afloat with any 2 flooded. Maybe 4, depending on who you ask. Possibly even 5. Of course, no one down here has seen those compartments. You assume they exist. Like unicorns or kindly landlords. You roll over. The mattress groans again. Somewhere far above, a door slams, then silence. Outside your room, the hallway is quiet. A few low voices pass by. Someone stifles a cough. You imagine the ship overhead. 5 more decks of people, mostly asleep, or pretending. First-class passengers in private staterooms with real pillows and electric heaters. Their windows are shut against the night air. Their beds don't creak. They probably don't wonder what 400 miles of ocean feels like above their heads. You breathe in and out, trying to focus on the rhythm, the movement of the ship, the faint sway. If you didn't know better, you'd think you were on solid ground. The Titanic glides through the North Atlantic with the grace of a floating hotel, its engines spinning nearly silent from down here. The vibration is constant, but smooth. So far, the seas have been unusually calm. Barely a chop. Even the gulls looked bored when they flew overhead yesterday. But tonight feels different. Still calm. Unnervingly so. The ship doesn't sway, doesn't dip. The sea is glass. And the sky, when you saw it earlier from the aft deck, was unusually clear. Stars sharp as pins. No moon, just silence. You remember thinking how eerie it was, the way the wind had died. No crests on the waves. Just blackness reflecting starlight. The kind of night where sound carries too far. Where even your thoughts echo. It's the sort of night that makes sailors nervous. And you now too. You sit up quietly. The bunk creaks, again betraying you. No one stirs. You swing your legs down and walk barefoot into the corridor. The passage is dark, save for a few low-burning lamps. The electric lights here are dulled at night to save power. A steward once joked it also discouraged passengers from panicking at the sight of each other in nightclothes. You walk down the hall, past a row of identical doors, each with 4 bunks, each with the same white paint flaking at the edges. You pass the communal lavatory. The sound of dripping water is louder than usual, or maybe it's just quieter elsewhere. At the stairwell, you pause. You're not supposed to go above at night, especially not unaccompanied. But you step up anyway, guided more by restlessness than reason. 2 decks up, near a third-class common area, you find a small porthole. Not a grand view, barely a slice of sea, but enough to glimpse the water, still dark and flat as slate. Stars gleam above like they've been nailed in place. You press your forehead to the glass. Cold? And then, the strangest thing, a flicker. Not light exactly, a movement, something distant, a shape, or just a shadow of a thought. You blink. It's gone. Back to bed. The walk down feels longer. The corridor seems narrower. When you return to your cabin, everyone is still asleep. You climb into your bunk and pull the blanket to your chin. You try to sleep, but the ship feels not still exactly, just wrong, like a song that skipped a beat, a silence you weren't expecting. And in that silence, you realize something deeply absurd and quietly horrifying. You don't know what it would sound like if the Titanic were in trouble. Would there be a noise, a grinding, a snap, a bell? Or would it be like this? Nothing at all. You think of the watertight doors, those great metal slabs that can seal off entire compartments in seconds. You've never seen them, but you heard someone say they're automatic. Triggered by flooding, they just drop, like guillotines. Efficient, really. You picture one slamming down without warning, then another, and suddenly the sound you imagined, the scream of steel buckling, becomes too loud in your thoughts, and you roll over again, pressing your hands to your ears. It's just nerves, you tell yourself. Just stories. You're thousands of miles from home, surrounded by strangers, being carried across an ocean you've never seen from shore. Of course, your mind is playing tricks. You've climbed too high, snuck too far, seen the edges of other people's worlds. It's made you suspicious of your own. You squeeze your eyes shut and listen again for the heartbeat of the ship. The engines hum, the pipes moan. Evan breathes. Carlo snores. The girl from Donegal turns in her bunk and sighs, not loud, but long, like someone remembering they still exist. You focus on that sigh, human and simple, something solid in the machinery. And finally, with no ceremony at all, you slip into uneasy sleep. Above, the Atlantic stretches black and endless, and somewhere, invisible for now, something cold waits patiently in the dark. The next day starts like any other. Too early, too loud, and somehow too warm and too cold at the same time. You wake up unsure whether you slept for 5 minutes or 5 hours. In truth, it's probably somewhere in between, stolen in snatches between creaking pipes and the haunting knowledge that the ocean is still out there, waiting. Your boots are colder than they were yesterday. You wiggle your toes before stepping in, hoping the heat from your feet will make peace with the leather. It's April 14th now. Sunday. Easter Sunday, in fact. At home, there'd be a sermon, then boiled eggs, then the sort of quiet family tension that passes for celebration. Here there's porridge. The dining saloon smells of tea, bread, and too many people with nowhere else to be. You sit with your usual group, Evan the Welshman, Carlo the Italian, and the Donegal girl, who still hasn't offered a name but has stopped flinching when people speak near her. A quiet improvement. You nod a happy Easter across the table. Only Carlo returns the greeting. Evan just mutters something about missing his boots and keeps eating. You hear someone at the far end of the table say something that catches your attention. "Ice ahead," the man says, voice low, like he's sharing state secrets instead of breakfast gossip. "Bergs," says another. "More than usual. They're drifting south." You look up. The men are older, one with a sailor's beard, the other with a face like baked leather. They sound like the sort who say, "I told you so," before anything actually happens. Still you listen. They say the wireless room's been getting warnings, the first man continues, buttering his bread with unnecessary force, from other ships. Wireless? Someone asks. The Marconi, the second man explains. They've got one aboard, big set, sparks flying and everything, sends messages to shore and other liners, not just for passengers. They use it for navigation too. Captain will know then, someone says, if there's danger. The two older men nod, slowly but not confidently. That's the worst kind of nod. Later, up on the open-air deck, you try to forget the conversation. The sea is as flat as a dinner plate, barely a ripple. The wind has stilled almost completely. The cold, though, that remains. It's the kind of cold that sneaks in under your clothes and lingers behind your ears. You pull your collar up and lean on the railing, squinting at the horizon. Nothing, just water and sky. Two blues with no border between them. Occasionally a sparkle where the sun hits the surface. No land, no ships, no birds, just quiet. You can feel it in the air. Not fear, not yet, but a sense of waiting, like the ship itself is listening. A steward nearby paces slowly, arms behind his back. He doesn't speak to anyone, but he watches everything. They're always watching, even when they pretend not to be. You remember what the man said about ice? That it's further south than normal this year, brought down by ocean currents that don't much care about shipping lanes or luxury. The Titanic is sailing near 41 degrees north, the same band of ocean where the Grand Banks fogs roll in and ice sometimes wanders, lost and unnoticed, until it's too late to matter. You heard someone say there were at least 6 warnings sent to the bridge yesterday. The Californian, the Caronia, the Baltic, all had spotted ice. Some had changed course, but Titanic had not slowed down. In fact, someone said the engines were pushing her harder today than yesterday. The pride of the White Star Line, after all, doesn't dawdle. At midday, you walk past the wireless room, or rather, as close as third class is allowed to get. The room itself is tucked behind second class, on the boat deck, off limits, and guarded by closed doors. But you hear the spark through the wall, the steady, sharp rhythm of Morse code being tapped out. The two operators, Phillips and Bride, someone said, have been sending passenger messages all day. Telegrams to New York, to London. Mostly first-class passengers dictating congratulations to friends or instructions to brokers. You wonder if they resent it. The operators, not the passengers. You wonder if, in between, arriving Wednesday, best regards, and buy shares immediately, they ever think to forward the ice reports to the captain. Or maybe they already have. Maybe he's read them, frowned, and poured another tea. You won't know. You're not allowed to know. That's not how class works aboard the Titanic. Information trickles down slowly, like melted ice through a brass funnel. By late afternoon, the rumours are more frequent. A second-class passenger says he overheard an officer mention unusual flows. A steward in third class mutters that they've changed watch rotations. One woman claims her porthole was frozen shut. Another says she saw a chunk of ice floating by the stern, though on inspection it turned out to be a towel from second class. Still, the talk continues. You wander again, heading up as far as the stewards will let you. On one deck, near the rear, you pause behind a group of well-dressed gentlemen discussing ship speeds. She's doing 22 knots, one says confidently, though you suspect he's guessing. Trying to make headlines, another says. Bruce Ismay's idea. He's aboard, you know. You've heard that name before? Ismay. the managing director of the White Star Line. You imagine he walks around the ship like a man who's already written his own newspaper article. One of the gentlemen leans on his cane and says, "I say, let her go fast. Get it over with. These crossings are terribly dull." You note that he has not spent time in steerage. Supper passes uneventfully. Stew again, though slightly more seasoned, as if the cook is repenting. You eat beside Carlo and Evan, who argues quietly with a Scottish boy about whether the ship is headed too far west. The Donegal girl doesn't speak, but her foot taps beneath the table. Maybe nerves, maybe boredom. You ask her if she's heard the ice rumours. She shrugs. "There's always something," she says, and takes another bite of bread. Evening descends. The sky sharpens again, stars winking into place one by one until the night is full of them. No clouds, no moon, just that same eerie stillness. The ocean is too calm. It doesn't move like water. It just waits. You go out on deck one last time. The wind cuts deeper now, and you wrap your arms tight. The cold isn't sharp. It's quiet, heavy, the sort of cold that soaks into your sleeves and settles in your lungs. There's a hum from the funnels, faint, rhythmic. Below deck, you know the stokers are still at work. Dozens of them, pale and sweating, shoveling coal into roaring furnaces. The Titanic burns over 600 tons of coal per day. That's 100 firemen on shifts, 24 hours a day, keeping her alive. You've seen none of them. You don't know their names, but you feel their work beneath your boots. Someone nearby mentions the iceberg warnings again. "They've got lookouts posted in the crow's nest, of course," he says. "Best view on the ship." You don't say anything. You just watch the sea. It reflects the stars so perfectly that for a moment you're not sure which way is up. The steward eventually calls for the deck to be cleared. It's nearly 10. Time to return below. Time to sleep. Time to pretend the whispers haven't followed you all day. Back in your cabin, the blankets feel colder than usual. You lie down slowly, as if your bones want to test the bed before trusting it. The engines hum, pipes hiss, a distant thump, probably nothing. You close your eyes and listen to the ship breathe. Outside, the night sharpens, and somewhere out there, a lookout climbs a ladder with no binoculars. It happens just before midnight. You're not asleep yet, though you've been lying still in your bunk for what feels like hours. The darkness in the cabin is almost complete. The low-watt electric bulb above your head has been off for some time, and the only light now is the faintest spill from the corridor beyond the half-shut door. Carlo is breathing evenly, for once not snoring. Evan has turned to face the wall, one hand beneath his head. The Donegal girl hasn't moved for the better part of an hour. The ship is quiet, not silent, of course. Titanic never truly rests. The vibration of the engines is always there, low and steady. The sound of water rushing past the hull. A metal creak every now and then. The occasional thump of something falling somewhere. A bucket. A mop. A steward's patience. But this is different. The jolt isn't sharp. It's not the screeching, cinematic sort of collision you'd expect. No fireworks, no explosion, just a shiver. A long, low, grinding sensation that hums through the bones of the ship and into yours, like someone has run a giant finger along the hull from bow to stern. Your mattress shifts slightly. The pipes above your head rattle. Carlo stirs. Evan grunts and mutters something about potatoes. Then everything stops. For a few seconds, the engines go quiet. Not off, not quite, but they pause. You notice it like you'd notice a missing tooth, or a heartbeat that skips. The vibration in the walls, your bed, the very floor, gone, and in its place an awful stillness. Then the engines resume, not with a roar, but with a hesitant hum, like a man coughing politely after realizing he said something awkward. You sit up, no alarm sounds, no bells, no shouting. Just the renewed rhythm of the ship beneath you, and the sudden, sharp awareness that something has changed. You climb out of your bunk and pull on your boots. Evan is sitting up now, rubbing his eyes. "What was that?" he asks, not quite to you. Carlo shrugs. "Maybe anchor shift, or a wave." You glance at the Donegal girl. She's watching the ceiling, arms still crossed. No one moves to leave the cabin. It's late, the kind of late where nothing important is ever expected to happen. But still, you walk into the corridor. Others are doing the same. Doors creak open, heads peek out. Faces half awake and confused. The corridor tilts slightly. Not dramatically, just enough that you notice a rolling bottle slide along the floor. Someone jokes about the sea rocking the ship like a cradle. Someone else doesn't laugh. You head toward the stairwell. There's no steward in sight, which in itself feels wrong. They're usually everywhere, appearing like shadows when you linger too long in the wrong area or try to pocket a second piece of bread. You climb 2 decks, boots echoing louder than you'd like. The air grows colder. Not subtly. Genuinely cold now. Your fingers tingle, and you draw your coat tighter. You make it to the general third-class space. It's fuller than expected. People are talking in low voices, some pacing. A man you recognize from meals, red hair, missing a tooth, is saying he felt the whole wall shake. Someone else claims the ship hit a whale. Another says he saw ice on the starboard side. A woman swears her porthole is leaking. Then the stewards arrive. At first they're calm, firm but polite. Nothing to worry about, they say. A precaution. Stay here. Don't go up top. No need to panic. The officers are inspecting the ship. There's been a minor incident. Everything's under control. You've never heard so many words that explain so little. You try to ask a question, but you're waved off. "Just stay calm, sir," one says. "Captain Smith will have it sorted presently." You glance toward the stairwell. It's now guarded. So you wait. The thing about being below deck is that information trickles slowly. Up in first class, passengers have already seen crew gathering near the lifeboats. They've felt the cold air sweep in as the forward hatch was opened. Some of them are asking questions directly to officers. Down here, you get hallway whispers and stewards with fixed smiles. But still, more people arrive. Children wrapped in shawls. Old men buttoning their coats. Young couples gripping each other's arms like handles. No one is shouting yet, but no one is laughing either. The floor tilts again. You notice it this time. A glass left on the table slides half an inch, then stops. Someone mentions lifeboats. Someone else says there aren't enough. You know that's true. You heard it days ago, a second-class man muttering about it. Only 16 boats and 4 collapsibles. Room for about 1,200 people. There are over 2,200 on board. You start to sweat, despite the cold. Then a steward reappears and speaks a few quiet words to another. That one's face changes, just slightly. His eyebrows rise. His jaw tightens. You see it. Then they both disappear. The room grows louder. Someone tries to climb the stairs. A steward blocks him. "You can't go up yet, sir. Please remain here." "Why?" the man asks. "Just orders." "Is the ship sinking?" "I can't say, sir." Which is as close to yes as a steward is likely to get. You turn toward the stern, the third-class open-air deck. If the forward gangway is blocked, maybe the aft deck is clear. Maybe you can get higher. See something. You start walking. The corridors are narrower now, more crowded. People are standing in clumps, unsure of what to do. Children are crying. A few suitcases sit by doors, packed in a hurry. Then you see it. Water. Just a thin trickle, running from under a door. But cold and moving. You stop. Someone else sees it too and backs away. A steward rounds the corner, eyes widening slightly. "Please return to your cabin, sir," he says. You don't. You turn and walk faster. Up another stairwell. This one leads to a door marked "Crew Access." It's unlocked. You step through. And suddenly you're in second class. The difference is immediate. Painted walls, polished floors, better lighting. But it's still chaotic. Passengers in nightgowns and coats. Stewards hurrying without looking hurried. Voices that don't match their words. You find a porthole and press your face to the glass. And there it is. Ice. A ridge of it along the starboard hull, jagged and white under the night sky. It must have scraped the side. You can see marks in the steel. Nothing catastrophic looking. But then again, what would that look like from here? You hear someone say the ship has struck an iceberg, that she's taken on water, that the watertight compartments are filling, that the bulkheads only rise as high as E deck. You're on F. You turn and head toward the open decks. You need air. Answers? The stairwells are jammed now. People moving both ways. A child drops a doll and starts wailing. A man curses as he's jostled against the railing. You squeeze through. At last you reach the outer deck. The cold is immediate, real, brutal. Your breath becomes smoke. The sky is too clear. The sea too flat. The iceberg itself is drifting away, monstrous and silent, taller than the decks, pale as a tombstone. Crew members move quickly now. Officers shout, lifeboats are uncovered, ropes are tested. Women and children are ushered toward them. You stand to one side, watching. You are not called, you are not expected. The unsinkable ship has struck ice. And only now, standing in the cold, do you understand that things break. Even the things they swear cannot. Even this. You're not supposed to be here. Not on this deck. Not in this part of the ship. Not watching lifeboats being lowered in the dark. Ropes groaning under the weight of too few people and too much delay. But no one stops you now? Not really. Not anymore. Whatever invisible boundary once kept third-class passengers out of sight has dissolved into cold fog and confusion. The officers have stopped noticing who came from where. Or if they do, they're too busy with ropes and winches and quiet, practiced shouts. You pull your coat tighter. The cold bites harder up here. Not the shivering sort, but the heavy kind that slides into your sleeves and behind your ears. The sort of cold that can slow your thoughts if you're not careful. The deck is crowded but not chaotic. Not yet. You can see the panic blooming in small pockets. A sharp voice here, a trembling hand there, but it hasn't spread fully. Most people still believe this is temporary. They've been told to stay calm, and so they are. But you're starting to see the cracks. A steward stands by the railing, eyes fixed on nothing. He's not giving instructions anymore. He just waits, shoulders stiff. A woman clutches a child too old to carry and refuses to meet anyone's gaze. The child, oddly, looks bored. You make your way toward the lifeboats. Carefully, slowly, not running. You've learned that running draws attention. Walking with purpose, though, that gets you where you need to go. You pass a lifeboat that's half full, maybe 25 people in it, mostly women, a few children, one man who looks too stunned to explain how he got there. An officer barks, "Lower away," and the ropes creak. The boat dips, swings once, steadies, and begins to descend into blackness. That boat was meant to hold 65. You want to ask why they didn't fill it. You want to ask if that man will be forced to give up his seat in the water. You want to ask a lot of things, but no one is answering questions now. The officer closest to you turns and calls out, "Next boat! Women and children only!" People start to move, but no one moves quickly. There's something surreal about it. The ship is tilting, you can feel it, but the instructions still come like boarding announcements. Courteous, measured, as if panic has been ruled out by regulation. You hear someone say the time. It's just past midnight. 15 minutes since the iceberg. Or maybe 30. It's hard to tell anymore. Up here, under the stars, time feels dislocated. A young woman steps forward to the next lifeboat. She's in a thin dressing gown, her hair hastily tied in a ribbon. She carries a suitcase that can't possibly hold anything useful. A steward takes it gently from her and sets it aside. "You won't need that, miss," he says. She doesn't argue. More women follow. One sobs quietly. Another jokes. Something about the boat looking more stable than her second husband. No one laughs, but the attempt lingers in the air, like a prayer that misfired. A boy, maybe 10 years old, tries to follow his mother into the boat. The officer hesitates. "How old?" he asks. 10, she says. He nods. The boy is waved forward. The mother squeezes his hand like it's the last hand she'll ever hold. Another woman refuses to go without her husband. "If he stays, I stay," she says, planting her feet. The officer doesn't argue, just moves on to the next name. You edge closer, trying to look useful. Maybe if you offer to row. Maybe if you lie and say you're crew. Maybe if... "Back, sir," the steward says firmly. "Women and children only." "I can row," you say. "We've got oarsmen already." "I'm crew," you lie. "Then get below and help," he says, without blinking. You step back. You scan the crowd for someone. Anyone, you know. You spot Evan. He's across the deck, standing like a post, watching the lifeboats without blinking. The Donegal girl is with him, now wearing a scarf you don't remember her owning. She's staring down at the wooden planks beneath her feet. You catch their eyes. No one waves. Another lifeboat is filled. Slowly, methodically, lowered into the dark. The water swallows the sound. From somewhere behind, a flare goes up. It's brilliant. A burst of white that turns the night into a false morning. For a moment, everything is too bright. The fear on people's faces is visible, sharp and undeniable. Then the flare fades and the stars take over again. You hear someone ask if help is coming. No one answers. The flares are meant to be seen. Distress signals, fired skyward at regular intervals. But they look beautiful, almost theatrical, like a show. As if this whole thing might be a trick, a diversion, a test. But it isn't. You hear someone mention the Californian. "Only 10 miles away," they say. "They'll come. They must have seen the rocket." You want to believe them, but something deep in your stomach says otherwise. You inch along the deck. A different lifeboat is being uncovered. This one has collapsible canvas sides. One of the emergency boats, stored near the forward bridge. A crewman curses as he fights with a rope. His fingers are bare and red. You see a group of men arguing nearby. One gestures to a list, another waves him off. Orders are changing now. The ship is changing. Logic is thinning. A few passengers begin to push forward. Not violently. Not enough to call it a panic. But the urgency is visible now. People have waited patiently for over an hour. But the ship is tilting more. Water is coming in. And the boats are leaving. Half full, mostly empty. And no one is calling your name. You pass another gate. One that had been locked earlier in the voyage. It's open now, hanging crooked. Someone forced it, maybe. Or maybe a crewman finally realized that gates don't float. A family rushes past you. Father, mother, 2 small children. The father pauses at the gangway. "Go," he says, gently. The mother shakes her head. Please. She doesn't move. A steward walks by, sees the moment and nods slightly. The children are taken. The parents stay behind. You keep moving. At the next boat there's an argument. A man refuses to leave without his wife. A crewman insists she's been taken on the previous boat. How do you know? The man shouts. I don't, the crewman admits. And that's it. No further explanation. He walks away. The band plays still. They've moved closer to the entrance of the grand staircase. You can't see them, but you hear the melody. Steady, slow, not cheerful, not mournful, just steady, like a heartbeat, or a clock, or something pretending to be both. Someone says they played Autumn. Others say it was Nearer, My God to Thee. You can't tell. It sounds like the kind of music people hum while folding shirts. Another boat goes down. This one is fuller. Word has spread. The crew are more urgent. Fewer hesitations. Still no call for men. Still no place for you. So you wait. You are told, again, to stay calm. The sea does not calm. The ship continues to tilt. And the stars continue to shine, indifferent and precise, as more lifeboats leave behind the lights. And you aren't entirely sure when the lifeboat stopped lowering. For a while, there had been a steady rhythm to it all. Officers calling out, stewards ushering women forward, the thump of wooden hulls being dragged into place and swung out over the sea, followed by the groaning pulse of ropes slowly lowering tiny bolts into the dark Atlantic. There was order of a kind. Not perfect, not fair, and certainly not equally applied, but it resembled something like procedure. And you had believed, in the quiet way people believe when they are trying not to panic, that eventually someone would point to you, maybe not immediately, maybe not warmly, and say, you, now this way, and that you would climb in, shivering, stunned, but alive. That was the hope, silent and absurd, that kept you moving. But now the boats are gone. You realise it slowly, like someone waking up and forgetting what day it is. You look down the line of davits and see only rope ends, wooden brackets swinging empty in the night wind. The crewmen who once moved quickly now stand still. Some look dazed, some have vanished. The stewards who had guarded stairwells like watchmen are simply gone. The crowd around you murmurs but doesn't cry out. No one wants to say it out loud, not yet. As if naming it, saying, there are no more boats, would trigger something final. But the knowledge spreads anyway, unspoken and unstoppable. Every second, the ship sinks deeper, and you begin to understand you have missed your chance. A collapsible boat is being worked on near the forward section, but even you can tell it's not going well. Collapsible A, someone whispers. They're trying to unfasten it from the roof, but it wasn't designed to be launched like this, and the angle of the deck isn't helping. The bow is noticeably lower now. Water has reached the deckhouses forward. Everything that was straight is now slanted. People adjust their footing without comment, leaning slightly, instinctively bracing against the change, as if pretending they aren't on a sinking ship, but simply walking a steeper hill than usual. A kind of still, horrified dignity has settled in, at least for now. You see officers shouting at one another as they wrestle with ropes, canvas, and spars, trying to make the ungainly craft seaworthy in real time. They call for hands, for axes, for more men, but it's chaos. There are too many volunteers now, not enough space, and far too little structure. What could once have been managed, with order, with drills, with warning, has crumbled into instinct and noise. You step forward, trying to help, or maybe just trying to be near something useful. A man grabs one side of the boat and pulls. You take another corner, straining. Your fingers slip, cold and useless, and the canvas buckles in the middle. Someone yells to steady it. Another man, not a sailor, but a passenger, climbs in before the boat is ready. He's thrown out a moment later. There's no discipline now, only desperation. The boat creaks under uneven weight, and when someone tries to swing it outward toward the davits, a rope snaps. The canvas tears, flapping in the wind like a broken sail. It doesn't go over the side. It just lurches to one end and collapses in on itself. People step back, realizing the moment is lost. You move on. There's no lifeboat left to chase, but movement still feels like hope, and so you follow the current of the crowds. The slope of the deck is undeniable now. You have to step carefully, holding the railings to maintain balance. The wind picks up, dragging at your coat. You see a woman fall, not hard, but awkwardly, and another person helps her up without speaking. The formality of earlier has disappeared. Everyone is doing what they can for the person directly in front of them, nothing more. There is no longer time for order, for stations, for distinctions of ticket class. At least not here, at the edge of the ship where everything tilts and nothing remains to be done. You pass what's left of Collapsible B, still tied to the roof of the officers' quarters. It hasn't even been moved yet. A few men are trying to untie it, but it looks hopeless. The ship is angled too sharply, and their footing is bad. The canvas is stiff with salt and ice. A rope gives way, and it slams against the roof with a hollow thud. One man slips and slides down the slanted wall before catching a pipe and hauling himself back up. You don't know whether to help or keep going. You keep going. Behind you, a man cries out. You turn to look and see someone climbing over the railing. A few people try to stop him, but he kicks free and leaps, a clean, hopeless arc, vanishing into the black. A splash follows, then nothing. No cry for help, just silence. Someone says something in a language you don't recognize. A woman starts sobbing quietly without drama. At the stern, the crowd has thickened. Dozens of people have already made their way aft, climbing slowly, awkwardly, as the deck tilts higher. The stern is the highest place left. There is nowhere else to go. A young boy near you is asking where the rest of his family went. No one answers. A man wraps his coat around the boy's shoulders. The boy sits down and starts to sing softly to himself. From somewhere midship comes a deep groan. Metal on metal, a sound of failure. The ship is breaking, not just flooding. The hull, strained and twisted by the uneven weight of thousands of tons of water pressing down on the forward compartments, is giving way. The bulkheads were supposed to hold. That's what you were told. She could stay afloat with 4 compartments flooded, but 5 went under. 6, maybe. You can't remember now. You press your hand to the rail and feel it vibrating. A living, dying thing. Someone near you starts praying aloud. Others follow. Hail Marys, Paternosters, verses half remembered and mumbled into sleeves. A group huddles near the second funnel, whispering to each other, arms locked. A steward walks past you, pale as salt, holding a length of rope in one hand and nothing in the other. He looks around, then kneels down and begins to tie something, not as a sailor would, but as a man trying to feel useful in the last hour of the world. The lights flicker, and then finally they go out. The ship is in darkness now. Utter, final, complete. No lanterns, no floodlights. No gentle glow from the salon windows. Just starlight and the pale sheen of frost on the deck. The wind rushes louder in your ears. You try to see your hands. You can't. Then the stern lifts sharply. Not a lurch, but a steady, terrible rise. You're pulled backward by gravity. People around you fall. You drop to your knees, grabbing the base of a davit to keep from sliding. Voices rise in pitch. Not all screaming, but all strained, stretched. You hear the sound of objects crashing down the tilted deck. Luggage, deck chairs, coal scuttles, bodies. One man tumbles past, arms outstretched, catching nothing. You close your eyes as he vanishes over the edge. The ship groans again, louder this time. A long, ripping sound deep in the core. It's breaking, really breaking now. Not just twisting, but splitting. You can feel it in your feet, your ribs, your teeth. Steel surrendering to the ocean. You climb, slowly, painfully. Hands shaking on the rail, boots slipping on frozen wood. You don't think anymore. You just move. Upward, always upward, to the very tail of the stern, to the last high point on the last high place on this enormous, dying ship. And then, without warning, the stern surges upward. The deck goes vertical. The ship is standing. You cling to the railing as the people beside you scream, fall, vanish. The wind whistles past your ears. You feel your grip failing, your arms burning. The sea is so close now, not beneath you, but beside you, curling up like a curtain drawn too high. And then you fall. You don't remember choosing to. You just let go. And the ship, once a marvel, once a miracle, once a palace of steel and lights and confidence, continues down without you into the cold, dark sea. The first thing you feel is not cold, it's violence. The ocean doesn't embrace you, it punches, it seizes, it claws the breath from your lungs before you've even surfaced. One moment you're on the ship, clinging to the stern, boots skidding on vertical planks, arms wrapped around freezing rail. The next, you're in the sea. No warning, no preparation, no elegance. Just sudden, brutal impact and the all-consuming realization that you are no longer on something. You are in something, and it wants you. You sink. It's not deep, not yet. The stern hadn't finished rising when you let go. But it's enough. Your limbs flail, desperate for direction. Your coat, heavy with cold Atlantic spray, drags you downward. Your shoes feel like anchors. You don't remember opening your mouth, but it's full of water now. Salt, oily soot, and something else. Something metallic and old. The taste of a ship dying. You break the surface, gasping. Around you the water is churning. People are screaming. Some are silent. Arms flail in the dark, grasping at nothing. You feel someone collide with you. Shoulder, elbow, then nothing. Someone else grabs your coat, then slips away. You tread water, barely, but the shock is winning. Your heart races, your lungs burn, but your body is slowing. The cold, 28 degrees Fahrenheit, just below freezing, begins its quiet work. You don't shiver. Not yet. That comes later. First, you just slow down. You look back. Titanic still looms, but only for a moment. The stern, once towering above, now shudders. It's upright, impossibly vertical. But even that is ending. You watch as the last funnel cracks free with a terrible metallic shriek and falls toward the water. It misses you by what feels like yards. A wave surges as it hits, flinging you backward. For a moment, you're underwater again. This time you don't fight as hard. Not because you're calm, but because your limbs are already forgetting how to move. When you rise again, the ship is going, not sinking, gone. The stern slips beneath with astonishing speed. One moment it's there, iron, wood, angles, shadows, and the next it's swallowed whole. No splash, no fireworks, just a long, groaning descent into silence. The Titanic, the unsinkable ship, the pride of an empire, the floating city of lights and excess, is beneath the waves. And you are alone, not truly alone, not yet. Around you, hundreds are still afloat. Some are calling names. Others scream wordless things. Prayers, apologies, curses, pleas. You recognize none of them. Their voices blend into one rising chorus, carried on the frozen wind. Some are already silent. They float like wreckage, their heads barely above water, limbs slack. Most aren't moving. A few paddle weakly toward anything that floats. Chairs, boards, a waterlogged canvas boat flipped upside down. You start to swim. You don't remember deciding to, but you do. Your arms are numb, but they still obey. You kick, though you can't feel your feet. Somewhere to your left, you spot a dark shape. Flat, uneven, occupied. A collapsible boat, overturned, with men perched on its sides like birds on a log. You aim for it. Not because it looks inviting. It doesn't. It looks awful. Overcrowded, wet, nearly sinking. But it's not water. And that's enough. The swim is short, maybe 15 yards. It feels like a mile. Every stroke burns. You can't tell if your muscles are working or if the sea is simply pushing you along. At one point, you slip under again. When you come up, the stars seem brighter, harsher, like they're watching. You make a noise. Not a word, just a sound. And finally a hand grabs your coat. You're hauled onto the side of the raft. Not fully, there's no room, but enough to get your head out of the water. Your legs dangle in the sea, dragging like kelp. You heave, cough, retch. The man who pulled you up doesn't speak. None of them do. At least 20 are perched here, sitting ankle to ankle along the curved hull of the overturned collapsible. Officer Lightoller is among them. You recognize his cap. He gives quiet instructions, pointing toward a tighter configuration. Keep balance, he says once. Keep breathing, he says again. That's all. The boat sinks lower with every new arrival. At one point, a man tries to climb all the way on, and the whole thing nearly flips. Screams rise again. Lightoller shouts, "Stay off the top!" The man is pushed back into the water. No one helps him up again. You cling to a rope line, chest heaving. The cold is unbearable now. Not sharp, but hollow. Inside your bones. You feel your thoughts slowing, memories coming unbidden. Your sister in Queenstown, waving from the top. The man in the bunk beside you snoring like a sawmill. The deck chair that creaked when you leaned too far back. The warmth of a cup of tea somewhere, on some earlier day. You realize you may never feel warm again. Time passes strangely. Somewhere behind you, a man cries out, "We must go back!" Others echo him, "Back to the people! They're drowning!" But the voice that answers is flat. "We'll swamp the boats." Another voice. "We wait. Then we return." You can't see them, the real lifeboats, the upright ones that left earlier, but they're nearby, just out of reach. Most are not full. Some have only a dozen aboard, floating in boats meant for 60. But the sea is full of hands now. If they go back too soon, they'll be overturned. So they wait, the cries in the dark grow fewer. One by one, the voices fade. The splashes stop. The sea goes still. You look out and realize the stars are reflected perfectly now. No waves, no wind, no motion at all. The only thing that moves is your breath, fogging faintly in front of you. The raft shifts beneath you. Someone has died. The weight redistributes. No one says anything. You hold on tighter. Your arms burn, but you don't let go. Not because you're strong, but because you've forgotten how to do anything else. Lightoller keeps the group balanced. He rotates people, makes them shift to avoid tipping. Someone falls off and doesn't come back up. Another says nothing, just slips away into the dark. You stop asking who's still here. It no longer matters. You try to count the stars. You lose track. You try again. It doesn't help. Eventually, in the distance, you hear a sound. Oars. At first you think it's in your head. But then the sound grows clearer. A rhythm. Not fast, but deliberate. Controlled. A voice calls out, "Is anyone alive?" You almost laugh. The voice again. Is anyone there? Then you see it. A lantern, swinging. Then another. A boat. Real. Upright. Near. They've come back. The boat pulls alongside. Hands reach out. Names are asked. Someone lifts you by the arms. You don't help. You can't. You're dragged over the side like a sack. You land in the bottom of the lifeboat with a thud. No one scolds you. No one cheers. Someone wraps you in a coat. Another gives you a sip of brandy. You cough it out. You're among the lucky ones. And yet, as the boat turns and rows toward the horizon, you look back one last time. The sea is flat, utterly still. And where the Titanic once stood, where 46,000 tons of steel met the Atlantic, there is only night. You awaken not in the sea, not on the lifeboat, but in a place that feels unreal. A wooden deck beneath your body, hard but unmoving. A low voice speaking beside you in an accent you don't recognize. You feel warmth, not true heat, but the absence of freezing. Then light. Too much of it. Not the sharp brilliance of a starry sky over open water, but the muted grey of a misty morning. You try to sit up and find that you can't. Not because something holds you, but because your body has not yet remembered how. You're wrapped in wool, in hands, in steam, in soft fabric. A cup is pressed to your lips. You drink something thin and warm that tastes like nothing at all. You do not speak. You could not if you tried. The ship is the RMS Carpathia. You learn this not from memory, but from the whispers around you. She is smaller than the Titanic, slower, not half so grand, and yet she's the most beautiful thing you've ever touched. She had turned from her course when the distress came through. Her captain had ordered full steam ahead, dodging ice fields in the dark, racing to a position she would never reach in time. The Titanic had gone down 2 hours before she arrived, but she'd pulled survivors from lifeboats in the grey half-light of dawn. 705 of you, each one stiff and pale, each one blinking as if waking from the same nightmare. Now she turns back toward New York. The last message is sent, the world already stirring with horror and confusion. You lie among strangers, all of whom share the same 1,000-yard stare. There is no cheering, no songs of rescue, no sense of triumph. You are not saved. You are merely not lost. For the next few days, time passes in blinks. You are moved below decks, out of the open air, into a hold converted into an infirmary, or maybe a makeshift dormitory. There are bodies around you, not corpses, but survivors like yourself, swaddled in woolen blankets and propped against bulkheads. Crewmen pass in and out. A woman speaks softly, her hands holding a sponge to a child's lips. You notice you are still wearing the same trousers, now stiff with salt. Someone brings you socks that don't fit. You wear them anyway. Meals come, and you eat without knowing what they are. Tea, bread, broth, a boiled egg. You feel guilt at every swallow. There are men who cannot lift their heads. You do not know their names. They do not ask yours. The stories begin before you even leave the ship. They float through the corridors like the chill that rises off wet clothes, drying too slowly in tight quarters. One man claims the Titanic split in half. Another swears it did not. Some speak of officers firing pistols, of lifeboats half full and pushing away from crowds screaming in the dark. There is talk of men dressed as women, of sailors obeying orders until the very last moment, of an officer who took his own life on the deck rather than choose who would live or die. There is no way to confirm any of it, and yet you absorb every word. These rumours become a sort of common language between you. When a man breaks down in sobs, no one asks why. You all know why. You hear the name Lightoller spoken with reverence, though he too is as hollow-eyed as the rest. He survived by balancing on the overturned collapsible, organizing those who clung to it like driftwood. Others speak of a baker who drank himself nearly senseless before stepping into the sea and somehow floated to safety on a barrel of bread. These tales sound like inventions. They are not. Every passenger carries a piece of the story, jagged and imperfect. When you try to speak of your own, the words do not come. Not because you are ashamed, but because you do not know how to begin. New York Harbor arrives with little warning. You're called above deck and blink into the foggy skyline. Crowds line the piers. People have heard. Not everything, but enough. Headlines scream from waiting newspapers. Titanic sinks. 1,500 feared dead. Women and children first. Heroes in the night. World's greatest liner lost. You do not know if the figures are correct. You only know that more were lost than saved. When you step onto the gangway, reporters rush forward. They ask your name, where you were when the ship went down, whether you saw the iceberg, whether you were in a lifeboat. Some survivors speak eagerly, hungry for recognition or comfort. Others weep. You say nothing, moving past the cameras like a man already buried. The survivors are herded into groups. First class is met with carriages, waiting family members, hotels with warm beds and quiet staff. Second class receives sympathetic escorts, charitable offers, clean clothes. You, a third class passenger, are sent to a holding area. Nothing cruel, but nothing comforting either. A city official reads from a clipboard. You are given the name of a charity offering lodging for the indigent. No one says the word immigrant, but you hear it in their tone. You are processed, not welcomed. In the days that follow, your survival becomes paperwork. A man from the White Star Line asks for your address, your employment history, your intended destination. You have none. You intended to start fresh, to find work, to become someone. Now you are someone else entirely, an echo of a voyage that never reached its end. The line gives you a small sum, compensation they call it, enough for new clothes, perhaps a room for a week. It feels like hush money. People treat you gently, for a while. When they learn you were on the Titanic, their eyes widen. Some ask you to tell your story. Others simply touch your shoulder, as if trying to absorb a piece of your pain. You oblige a few of them, speaking carefully, omitting the worst parts. You leave out the screaming, the final moments, the silence after. But even that grows tiresome. Soon, people grow impatient. They ask what it was really like. Was it beautiful? Did you hear the music? Did the captain go down with the ship? Their interest begins to curdle into something else. Morbid curiosity. Spectacle. You stop answering. The weeks pass. You find work. Warehouse lifting mostly. You're strong enough, though your joints ache when it rains. A local church helps you find a room. You share it with two others, neither of whom were on the ship. They speak of baseball scores and wages and who's courting who. You nod along, grateful to be in a world that continues to exist, and yet you are no longer part of it. You walk the streets at night, unable to sleep. When you do sleep, your dreams are of stars over water, of the groan of metal, of cold that bites deeper than bone. Eventually the newspapers move on. The world finds new stories, political crises, strikes. The sinking becomes history. Tragic, yes, but distant. You are no longer a survivor. You are just a man with a job, a coat, and a silence he keeps to himself. You do not attend reunions. You do not write memoirs. You receive a letter from a cousin back home in Ireland who saw your name in a list and wept with relief. You write back briefly, and then do not write again. Years pass. The city changes. Cars become common. Skyscrapers rise. People forget. But you do not. Every April, the air feels colder. Every time you board a ferry, you grip the railing with more force than necessary. You never return to the sea. Not for pleasure, not for passage, not for anything. And yet you live. Not easily, not without pain, but you do. You walk the streets. You speak when spoken to. You age. You become, to those who meet you later in life, a quiet man, a hard worker, a reliable lodger. No one guesses that you once stood on the slanted stern of the world's grandest ship and stared death in the face. You do not speak of it, but you remember everything. You remember the thud of the iceberg, the vibration of steel underfoot, the smell of varnished wood and salt and panic. You remember the silence in the lifeboat, the weight of a man's body slipping beneath the waves, the terrible, beautiful calm of the sea after the cries had stopped. And most of all, you remember the lights that flickered once, twice, then vanished, leaving only the stars.